Hey everybody! So once you have your profitable campaign, it's time to scale it, right? So scaling is the third phase of the whole process. So first you test your product and then you optimize it, and after you get a positive ROI out of the optimization, then it's time to scale, right? So at this point, I assume your campaign is already profitable, right? Or we can say that your cost per purchase is less than your KPI. So the KPI here is the metric that you are willing to spend in order to get one purchase, right? This can be purchase, this can be lead, whatever conversion you are defining here. When you scale, don't increase the budget too quickly, right? Some people get so excited after they found their winning campaign, and then the next day they just really scale it to $1,000 per day, right? By doing this, it will hurt your performing campaign. You will suddenly become losing money. So the proper way to do it is to scale it up slowly, right? Why? Because Facebook needs time to optimize. So how to properly scale your campaign? So there are two ways to scale it. First is scaling up, which is to increase the budget, right? For example, from $10 per day become $20, become $30 per day. And scale out means that you are creating a new ad set, right? You're targeting a new audience. So let's go to the first one, scale up. So the way to scale up is not more than 50% of the previous budget, right? So for example, if you start with $10, it's still okay to directly double it to $20, but start from here, I suggest you increase it by 50%, right, which is $30. And then the next scaling is 50% of it increase, which is 15. So the next budget will be $45 per day. The reason is because Facebook takes time to optimize your campaign after you change the budget. If you scale up too quickly, you might screw up your performing ad set. So that's why I suggest you to scale up slowly. And after you scale up, you let the ad run for 2 to 3 days. Give Facebook 48 hours to optimize. Right? After 2 to 3 days, after increasing the budget, you check the ROI. If your cost per purchase is still less than KPI, which means that your ad is doing well, then you repeat step 1 and step 2. But if at one point your cost per purchase is higher than your KPI, then you lower the budget to the previous amount where your ad was still performing well. Depending on your offer, targeting, and campaign, at one point you will reach a daily budget where your ad performance will reach its diminishing return. This is expected, so if this happens, you just lower back to the previous budget and you can continue scaling with the scaling out, or you adding new ad sets. Now the question, in scaling up, is there maximum daily budget per ad set? So this is like a rule of thumb for me, like $10 maximum daily budget for every 10,000 audience. So for example, if your ad set has 30,000 audience, so you can scale as high as $30 budget per day. Alright, for example, it's 40,000, then your maximum daily budget should be $40, right? Because if you spend too high budget for such a small audience, the frequency will increase very fast, which in turn will increase your advertising cost. So 100,000 audience, the maximum daily budget should be $100. Now the next question you might ask is, what if you really want to scale up quickly? For example, if you have time constraint for your campaign or you are launching a product. So there is a way to do that, is you can duplicate your performing ad set, right? Instead of taking risks to screw up your performing ad set, you duplicate it and then you can put a high daily budget on a new ad set. Right? The worst thing is that if you screw up, you are screwing up the new ad set, not the performing one. Right? For example, if you duplicate and it doesn't work, you just turn it off and you try another duplication. Right? Sometimes out of 3 or 4 duplications, you can find 1 or 2 that works. Okay, for example, if you have an ad set that is performing very well and you are having a daily budget of $30, right? You can duplicate that ad set and you can put like $100 daily budget to the new ad set. Now, regarding duplications, you might then ask, what about audience overlap, right? Because if you duplicate exactly the same ad set without changing the targeting and stuff, we would target the same exact audience with those two ad sets, right? Now, my take on this is that if your audience size is very big, for example, like millions of audience, and your daily budget for your ad set is just like $30 per day, right? And you duplicate with $100 per day, with that size of audience, the chance of having overlap is low. I think you don't need to worry about it. But if your audience size is small and your daily budget is high, then duplicating it might give you some problem. Now, if you are still worried about audience overlap, then there is a way to do it, is that when you duplicate an ad set, you change a bit on the age range. For example, the performing ad set, the age range is 18 to 65, right? Now, when you duplicate a new ad set, you change a bit the age range to be like, for example, 19 to 65 or 18 to 64. Then we are telling Facebook that we are targeting not exactly the same audience. Alright, so that's all about scaling up. Now the second one is to scale out. Scaling out means that you create a new ad set and you target other interests. Right? If there is outstanding buyers demographics, then you can target them on a new ad set. For example, you find out that your buyers are mostly coming from 35 to 44, then on your new ad set, you can target those age range. Remember, you have the list of interests that you have collected in the beginning, right? Now it's time to take it out and use the interest for your scaling phase. Now, when you're in scaling, you might not need narrowing. What I mean is that, remember when we do the testing, we book in the interest here, and then we intersect with one of the interests here with the biggest audience, right? Now, in the scaling phase, you don't need to do the narrowing. Why? Because you have tested and you have proven that your offer is converting, and at this time, you might already have a winning demographics. You already know which age are buying, right? So you don't need to be that tight with targeting anymore. So the concept is that when you start with a super precise interest, right? You test with a super precise interest because you want to give yourself the best chance of presenting your product to people who are most likely to buy. And then after you have tested and you have proven that there are buyers in the super precise interest, next we can test using this audience, which is the associated interest. And then if you still get good result with this audience here, you can move to the next audience, which is in the broad interest. Alright, so this is how you gradually move from the super precise targeting to the broad targeting. And the scaling methods that we have discussed, they apply to the PPE, CTW, and WC campaign. So whatever campaign objectives you are running, you can scale using the same method that I described here.